Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the next edition of the DFS Down Under show with many thanks to Draftstars. Draftstars Australia's #1 AFL daily fantasy platform for your AFL daily fantasy. We're up to round 23, the last regular games of the season, and we're having a little bit of a hangover from the Draftstars live final as I bring in my mate here is Hef. Hello, mate. How are you going after the events of last Sunday?
Good to see you again, Smatho. Yes, I've finally recovered. It was a cracking day. Would have been great for everyone to be together, but the fact that we couldn't, I think everyone sort of made the best of it. Amazing how an event like that can inject such enthusiasm for what was, in the end, a pretty pitiful game of football, wasn't it?
It was, well, out of the football I managed to watch, because obviously I was a little bit tied up doing other stuff, but I ended up watching, must have been 4 out of the 5 Jake Stringer goals, thinking, oh, who's got Stringer? Where's Stringer? I'm clicking the leaderboard for Stringer goals, and it was only a 19% ownership on that particular game, but we do have to congratulate to the $100,000 win. I've got the banner down the bottom there. There is Tommy's Guns. Likeable gentleman who was very gracious in his win. Thanked a lot of people and all that. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the live final stream, it's still available. If you check out Draftstars Twitter or Facebook, you'll be able to find the links there and go obviously scrub towards the end of the stream. Be able to check that out. Obviously, our second place Kyle Lamouses was a bit of a crack up. Did you catch any of him, mate?
Oh, I had to go back and watch. Obviously, I was on location there. It's funny you talk about Stringer. The place we were in, there was a huge crowd of about 4 actually coming to that last quarter. There's a couple of couples just there having a bit of bite to eat while we're over in the corner, and the difference is about 80 points, and blokes are going berserk when Stringer's kicking them from everywhere because Liam Swanee was up sort of kicking around the top 10, so they would have been thinking, I don't know what these blokes are on at 5 o'clock on a Sunday arvo with a total nothing game going on. But like you say, that's what we play fantasy for, isn't it? Just to brighten up those type of games.
Now, one of the highlights of the live event was the actual cross to you at the venue on early Sunday afternoon. So now this particular streaming software, I have queued up the section of the video. I want to go back here and quickly go back and have a look at this particular video and just see how you went at the live final. Here we go. 7 minutes before contest lock. Let's go around the grounds here in Australia.
You're looking very sharp,
Smatho. Many idiots around Australia watching the live final today. Me and my double chin. Let's start down here in my little neck of the woods down here in Hobart Town. Let's cross over to
He's
the
main
man
coming up.
Friday.
The main man.
Oh, where is he? Where is he?
I can't see him.
Mobile. Good afternoon, mate. How are you feeling today?
Hey, Smatho, the production value is a bit lower down here at Fox Friday, but we've got a few of the lads together. Very lucky that we can do that down here in Tassie, given everything that's going on. But got 3 lucky ticket holders, and we're pumped to.
There you are.
Yeah, we're pumped to see who can take home this live final.
All right, let's get stuck into the lads. Who you got there with you today? Let's have a say hello to him.
And he's your mates.
Let's go and have a
this is the Tassie Mafia.
Big Briss 17 here.
Here
he is, the great man, the big Bristle. Pumped today, Bristle. How are we looking?
Yeah, very excited. Not as excited as Liam Swan, still changing his team.
Oh, yeah. So Briss has got 2 tickets. We've got Liam Swan here. Here he is, 2 tickets as well for the great man. You excited?
No, that's been a lot low, isn't it? Take it back a bit.
All right, we're live. And over the back here, we've got my tip at long odds is SG Brown 102. He's just got the 1 ticket. Excited today, Balls?
Couldn't be more excited. A bit nervous about the fat cat slogan.
All right, and let's move on back to you, Smatho. The drinks are flowing, that's for sure.
Oh, dear. Mate.
You'll see that comment that came up on the screen. I actually hadn't had a drink by then.
Geez.
It was just it wasn't as well set up as the home office here, that's for sure. But yeah, the lads all got together. That's what fantasy's all about, getting together and cheering them on. There wasn't any luck for my tip there, SG Brown. He languished down the bottom. So did the big bristle man. But congratulations to Liam, who had a top 10 finish. Adjustments, as is often the case with him, weren't kind. I think he dropped from 8th to 10th and cost him $1,000. But I gave everyone a bit of entertainment for the day. And yeah, congratulations, of course, to the winners. And, well, everyone who made it, for starters. And good to see there's like a top 10, 14 who are taking home some pretty serious cash.
Yeah, no, congratulations to all the golden ticket winners who participated in the day. Big shout out to Draftstars for putting that event on. Yeah, we knew that circumstances around the country meant that we couldn't get together. I'm certainly looking forward to catching up the next opportunity too. But yeah, tip of the cap to the guys at Draftstars. And obviously Tommy's Guns there, $100,000, mate. Awesome win. All right, Hef. Now, the reason why we're here, we talk about footy, and we're going to be talking about this particular match, the Bulldogs and the Power. Last game of the season on Friday night, regular season, $90,000 pool. I think they've had some loose change from my appearance fee, so they decided to just chuck it back in the pool for the Draftstars, guys. 7:50 p.m. starter, $7,964 first prize. If it goes off, it could increase if we go over the pools there. Mate, it's a 7:50 start. Cats are actually, the Dogs, sorry. No, is the Power favourites? $1.74? What was the Doggies? One of those two teams, the favourites. You can check for me. The Lions 5.5, and the totals are 158.5. We're at Marvel Stadium, so obviously no crowd, and obviously no issues with the weather. Obviously, in team news, the Dogs only made one change with Rourke Smith coming in for Riley Garcia. Anthony Scott was the medical sub last week. For the Power, Stevie Motlop and Trent McKenzie coming to the side for Orazio Fantasia, who has a little bit of a hamstring injury, and Tom Cleary's been omitted. Sam Mays, who's always been the sub for them this year, is out of the side, but you'll probably be named as sub again. So, Hef, any thoughts on those changes? There's not many there, but like for like, you reckon?
Pretty much they are, aren't they? McKenzie looks like he's coming to take over from Cleary. Stevie Motlop in to take over from Fantasia. Smith placing Garcia is sort of just on the outskirts there. You mentioned Sam Mays as the likely sub. 5,000. His price tag, Mays. We've talked from time to time about throwing in the sub just to go super unique and probably a bit too clever for your own good, but there's an opportunity for you if you like playing a 5K sub. I'd have a look at Sam Mays if you want to be different. It's not really my cup of tea, but there you go.
Well, there is a little bit of a theme tonight because obviously there's not terribly too much value. So if you're really struggling to find something, this could be something unique, but you never know.
We did have the suggestion of playing the 0 in the ruck last week. So at least if you give yourself a chance with the sub.
I had a Draper go in there. Draper only got 60 odd in the end, 70 odd. So it would be a bit hard to catch that up. Now, as always, we use Daily Fantasy Rankings for our resources for AFL Daily Fantasy, and this week's notes include the Dogs. Lately, they've been giving up some 100-plus scores in their last 5. Power's only doing 2.5 per game to the Dogs 3.4. Dogs in season-long trends are the second leakiest in the league to opposition backs. However, in the last 5, they have dragged it back to be 14th in the league. Power, on the other hand, are 17th in their last 5. The Dogs are number 1 in the league for opposition fantasy scoring to Rucks, and the Power in the last 3 games have outscored teams by an average of 148 fantasy points per team. So, Hef, any other dirt or news or data that you can provide the viewers that you can help with their lineups this week?
Well, we've talked a lot about Port Adelaide. They do play a very contested brand. So while they do tend to give up more contested possessions than usual, they do sort of get their own contested as well. So it's more of a game style with them that sort of gets us looking at the Dogs' contested midfielders, I guess. In terms of the Dogs, if anything, they give up more uncontested marks than the average, and that sort of ties in with that points to defenders. Interesting, we did go through this game back when these two teams played earlier in the year. If you remember round 9, did we go through this game? I'm not sure if we did or not, but I remember looking at the game, even if we didn't go through it, thinking, oh, the Dogs are the ones giving up the points to the backs. If you remember back halfway through the year, that was a pretty strong trend. In this game, it was over in Adelaide. The Dogs knocked them over. They jumped them. Port Adelaide came back. Dogs were too strong in the end. It was interesting that the Dogs' backs were actually the ones that filled up in this game. There was the likes of Caleb Daniel, Bailey Dale, Taylor Duray, Bailey Williams. They were all sort of that sort of 80 to 100 mark. And for the power, when we're potentially looking for the backs, with that Dog stat we were following along, it was only really Darcy Byrne-Jones with an 80 and everyone else was a bit lower than that. So the data points to playing the Port backs, but that sort of throws a spanner in the works there.
All right, let's get stuck in this particular slate. 90,000. Love to see the prize pools going up here. As always, we start with the Rucks, and look at that, a little blanket over 12K. Slice it, English and Laddams, all at 12,000. Only $250 between the three of them. The tool suggests that we probably want to be focusing either on Lysette or Laddams, since English / Martin / Sweet tend to give fantasy points up. But Scotty Lysette's form there is not terribly great because he's been battling some knee soreness. So a 59 last week, which probably means that he might go the least owned out of this three. So what do you think about these particular rucks on the slate?
He's notorious for picking up an injury during a game, Lysette, and just sort of paddling his way to the end. But I don't think they'd take a risk with him at this stage of the year if there was anything too bad going on with his knee. Last week, after he went off, Laddams really just feasted on Carlton in that absolute massacre over there. So you'll see that big 110. His form before that was pretty reasonable considering he's playing that second ruck role. You talk about the data pointing to the Port players. I still wouldn't be writing off Tim English here. One thing, he didn't play last time. Jordan Sweet only got about 50 odd when he was lone rucking. One little thing in English's favour is that Aaron Norton, I think, had a good game. I've always had a little knock on the tall defenders for Port. So if English does rest forward a little bit, he might be able to bob up with a goal or two there, which will help him. And he is the lone ruck here. So at 12,000, that's usually a pretty good sign. So I found this really hard to split. I'd probably go English, Lysette, Laddams if I'm forced to pick. I could definitely see a case. I'd still go English and Lysette above Laddams. I think it's just hard. It's just hard for that second ruck to cover the 12,000 price.
I reckon they're around $2,000 each too expensive to consider for double ruck stacks. Would you think that would be the case?
I'm not a big fan of the double ruck stack here.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to defence. And once again, you can throw a blanket over these guys in terms of the salary. Obviously, Caleb Daniel does stand out at $13,360, which is around $1,500 more than anyone else. But if you look at those Port options with Burton all the way through to McKenzie, who gets a game this week, Bergman, Bonner, even Leah who come in a bit of form. Some plentiful options there. We talked about the data as well that the Dogs can leak, but verse that to what they did last time. So this is pretty pivotal in terms of your lineups here because there are some good options. Not the best, but they're all good. They're all good.
It's the usual suspects here. The two very settled lineups. Pretty consistent scorers, and the boys at Draftstars, they've nailed these salaries. There's not really much in terms of value. One guy that sort of caught the eye was Bailey Williams there at 9.5. He's potentially a little bit under where he is. He does have the sort of to see him go at 8x and get around 80. That's definitely in his hitting zone. Williams, he did score 80 odd against them last time. So looking for the value guys, he was a guy that sort of popped up for me. Lewis Young is an interesting one. If you want to just pull up his recent stats, one thing you'll notice here over there on the game log, Smatho, is his hit out numbers. So with Timmy English as number one ruck, it's Young who's getting the burn in the middle to relieve him. So I'm always on the lookout for these guys when they're about 6,000-7,000. If they're getting that bit of ruck time, it can boost their floor. He's not setting the world on fire by any stretch, but if you happen to bob up for a 60 here, you'd be quite happy at that price, Young. The best opinion I can have on these backs is just to line them up with the rest of your lineup. I think whether you choose to go with a couple of port backs or you want to go with a couple of dogs, just make sure it fits the script for the rest of your lineup, because I really don't have much to advise here, Smatho.
No, I thought you wouldn't have the cast since there's some plentiful options. I'll see McKenzie back in the side. He does take majority of the kickouts, but people like Ryan Burton, who has the best form at the moment, back-to-back tons to start the month of August. The 68 last week might drag him down a little bit, but I don't really have too much of a hot take on this particular one. I might go with your on Lewis Young, might save a bit of money there. And I might just come back up to Trent. I don't want to play Trent McKenzie. I might just go Ryan Burton and go with the field for that particular one there. All right, let's move on to mids. We're not going to find many value plays in the midfield in this one. So we need to nail probably one or two of the premiums. If you are going to go very cheap with your forward or back line. My probably first decision is actually to avoid Ollie Wines. Look, I am box watching here because that scores there are not exactly $16,790 worth of your coin. Does he have a chance to go big against the Dogs, though?
Absolutely. We sort of looked last week. There was a number of tons in the midfield there for the Hawks, which was surprising. We know some funny things can happen down in Tasmania, so I don't want to get too caught up on those sort of numbers. But look back earlier in the year, and Ollie Wines did have 130 against the Dogs through the middle of the ground. So he was clearly the number one scorer in that game. And in what's obviously a tough fantasy game because both teams are pretty stingy, if you can nail the big midfielder, the price probably isn't going to matter a whole lot. So I'm reluctant to pot Wines. I think he's definitely in the mix. I'm reluctant to pot any of these guys, really. If we just it was the main suspects that came to the fore last time. It was the Bontempelli, it was McRae, it was Boak. Interesting fact with the Dogs, though, is last time they played, Treloar and Dunkley were both out of the side. So with those guys back, there's a real logjam for the centre bounce roles, especially. I'm just going to run through some numbers from last week because Beveridge, we know he plays a lot of games, but he has seemed to have settled on his preferred midfield mix, and that's Bontempelli, McRae, and Liberatore. Dunkley, coming back into the side, has taken it away from Bailey Smith, who was getting a fair bit of run through the middle, but now he's splitting with Dunkley, and Treloar in his 2 games back has been under 20% both times. So on that basis, you think, well, maybe it's easy to let go of Treloar. Interestingly, early in the year, Treloar started with 10%, 28% in his 2 first games, and then next thing you know, they let him loose, and he was above 60% in his next couple of games. So if you are looking to go a bit contrarian, I think Treloar is going to be quite under-owned because of that recent form. Maybe this is the game where they sort of let him loose a bit more. But it is hard to fit all these Dogs into those midfield minutes.
If it was any other round, you could possibly make a case of Treloar to have more centre bounce time. But this is round 23. You need to win to make a top 4. You'd be scratching your head thinking, well, why are they playing Treloar for in the middle when they're playing Libba in there all season, or McRae and all in the season? But it is Bevo. That's the thing that can give you some comfort, thinking, well, if I do play Treloar, let's see if Bevo chucks him in the middle for a quarter and a half and it's working and he stays there for the rest of the game.
Well, interesting. We've got Bailey Smith. He has had 30-40% in the last couple of weeks. And when that flick, the switch was flicked for Treloar early in the season, it was Smith who was he really paid the price and basically went down to nothing in the centres. So he's a guy that I'm at 13,000. I'm really on high notice of of Smith, especially with Dunkley around as well. If you don't want to deal with the doggies and trying to guess what their rotation is going to be, Port Adelaide are much more settled. On the other hand, you've got Wines, you've got Boak, you've got Willem Drew, who's getting an absolute ton of midfield minutes, because that's basically what he is. He's not a guy that you can send out to the flanks, so he's obviously a little bit of a level below some of these big names we've got, but he's got the role. And then Amon is the other guy who's getting a lot of time. And geez, if someone told me Carl Amon at the start of the year was going to be 15,000 come round 23, you'd just be falling off your chair. But he's had an absolutely superb year, and he does fit the bill of the uncontested style that the Dogs have given up from time to time. So I think everyone knows these players. If you can work out what the midfield rotations are going to be like for the Bulldogs, and you can capitalise on that, I think that's going to take you a long way in this slate.
All right, let's quickly have a look down towards the value side, and there's not really too much there. We did talk about Mays potentially if he gets a game that could, but I don't recommend it. So Rourke Smith has been brought back. He's at 6,690. As I said, he was used as a sub 2 weeks ago. Gets a full game this week. He's a mid defender. Not real confident, but he will appear in a few sides.
And at 6,000, he did have 61 against the Power earlier in the year. So you'd be very happy, I say, if you were to play Rourke Smith and he got you 60. So he's basically your only cheap option through the middle.
Yep. And then you've got these Port guys, the Dersmers, Rosies, Bonner. They're all around the 19K. If you were going to choose one of these guys at this particular price point, is there anyone you want to lean on?
I would maybe go for, I don't know. Dersma, maybe?
Dersma?
Outrunning the wings. Yeah. I'm not really in love with any of them, to be honest.
No, but unfortunately you might have to play them. So I'm going to go Dersma. I'm going to go Drew. I'm going to go Leber for now. And I might squeeze on Amon as my mid. So let's move on to the forwards.
This is looking really unique, this lineup, Smatho.
Oh, it certainly is. It certainly is. It's round 23. I've been doing this all year. You know, mate. So, obviously, Tim English, Josh Dunkley, Laddens, Hunter, look, they're all available in different positions. So then we've got Zach Butters here at 11,170. He's been actually going pretty well. Back to back, 88 plus scores there. So he could be quite unique there at 11,170. Charlie Dixon's there at 11,000. He's been good in most games. There are a couple of off games there, but if you think the Power are going to do a number on the Doggies, then also he's essential. Robbie Gray is actually, third up after an 83 last week. He's also potentially another one there. So any thoughts on Port key forwards there, Hef?
Key forwards, I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. Robbie Gray, I love Robbie Gray as a player. I'm just a bit of jury's out on his ceiling these days. Around 10K, I don't think he's really getting you any more than about 80, and he's quite easily going underneath that. So I do like Butters. I think he showed early in the year that he had the potential to step up and sort of turn into a fantasy star. Obviously had injury issues, very consistent, and he does get the midfield minutes. We've talked a lot about Connor Rosie and whether he gets the midfield. He's going to get in the midfield eventually. While Butters is around, I think Butters is the preferred option, and they leave Rosie more up forward, which is why I wasn't overly keen playing Rosie, because he has to get his points in the forward line. Butters is the guy who's going to be up around the ball a bit more. 11K is probably still on the cheaper side for him compared to some of these other guys. So Butters is definitely my pick here from the Port forwards.
Unfortunately, I can't afford him for this particular side. So let me scroll down towards here. So you said you weren't real keen on the key forwards, which do include Georgiades at 7,340. His numbers are fine. Like if we can get you a 60, 65, 70, then that gives you an 8, 9x. Todd Marshall there, though, is obviously a concussed 0 there, but he does have that ceiling of 90, back in 1st of August. And then you've got the Bulldogs option. So this is probably an area that most guys, well, not say most guys, but a few are going to try and attack with Johannesson at 7,280 and Vandermeer at 6,520. I'll probably be playing one of these guys. So can you pick one for me?
If I wasn't thinking about ownership or anything, I'd be going Johannesson because he's got the higher ceiling, and at different times through the year, he's gone sort of 60s, 70s, which is excellent at this price. Earlier in the season, he had a 67. You'd be absolutely pumped if he was to repeat that dose again here. I'm not against sprinkling those Port key forwards, but I just wouldn't get too carried away with them. I'm quite happy playing Norton at 8,000. Now, I know his recent form is pretty shifty, but I just have this theory against Port that I'm not a huge rap on. Obviously, Jonas doesn't take the big guy. Cleary is out of the side. Looks like they're going with Mackenzie instead. So he might get the Mackenzie matchup. And in that case, I definitely want a bit of exposure to Aaron Norton.
Would he get a Leary or will Leary go somewhere else?
Look, possibly. I think he'll get Mackenzie, and I think they'll try and have Leary floating around, making a bit of a pest of himself. But Norton's hands are as good as anyone in the comp, and Mackenzie, he's not traditionally your monster fullback. He's obviously improved in that role and to the point where he's their preferred option. But look, I do think if Norton is getting a run at the ball, I think he could be a handful for him.
All right. I might put Norton in, and I can actually afford Stevie Motlop, who, if Port get on a bit of a tear, he can bob up and just supercharge your fantasy score. But there are some duds there, but that's not a bad looking box score there for Motlop throughout this season.
Sometimes they're the guys you want to look for here in fantasy. If someone's just going to potter around and get 65 each week and they can lock them in at 10K and not have to worry about them, he's very, very generous, Mark. So every week, isn't he?
Yes.
But it's the guys with the volatility. They're going to sink your lineup, but every one now and then they're going to be the difference for you. So Motlop's a guy that I'm always reluctant to pot or say don't play any of, because he does throw those games in where you need to have him.
Look at that side. I mean, it's not. If we said at the start, you can get one, possibly two premium guys, and then you just got to pray for the rest of them to hit value or at least extend value. Look, yeah, this is going to be this. If you win this particular slate, we're going to tip the cap. So we might have to do a bit of a breakdown for the first week of the finals for this particular.
So if it wasn't 2 minutes to 9, I'd say start again. But that's what we've got.
That's what we got. We've gone through this slate. We've looked at the players that you could possibly look at, and look at what we got. It's just, confidence levels are high on that one.
All right, that Maze sub play is looking better by the air after what I'm just looking at there.
Oh dear! All right, we'll leave it there. Make sure you give us a like for this particular video if you're on Facebook or on YouTube. Support the show, mate. We've got through 23 rounds. Now we're into the finals.
Jeez, we haven't been cancelled yet. Next week, Smatho, I want you to come back with that score on that team and where we would have finished up.
All right, I'll better enter it.
I reckon
submit the lineup.
It looks ugly. We might be surprised. Or you'll be playing it. You'll probably be crowing next week.
Oh, I'll definitely be crowing if it makes cash. I'll tell you what. So, Hef and I will be back obviously next Thursday for the first final, which will be on Friday night. So we'll break that down. Look, any comments or feedback, shoot us through anytime at Rankings DFS at Draftstars AU anytime. All right, Hef, thanks for your contribution. Sorry I had to drag out the archives from Sunday's event, but I just thought it was the most funniest thing I ever embraced on a live final.
Oh, it came up. I was really, really scared how that would have come up, and it didn't come up that bad. So let's just hope we're all together in the same room next time, Smatho.
No problems. All right. Well, thanks for watching the latest edition of the DFS Down Under show, and we'll catch you next time.